The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold, and the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea, when the blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. Lord Byron captured something terrifying in these lines. He was writing about an empire so brutal, so methodical in its cruelty, that even thousands of years later, its very name evokes images of terror and conquest. Today, we're diving into the rise and fall of the Assyrian Empire, the world's first true empire, and perhaps its most feared. Humble beginnings. Before they became conquerors, the Assyrians were traders. Let me take you back to the origins of this civilization. The Assyrians were a Semitic people whose ancestors migrated from the Arabian Peninsula. Back then, Arabia wasn't the vast desert we know today. It was actually a savanna. But in the second half of the 3rd millennium BC, the climate changed, and Arabia became increasingly arid. This forced massive migrations of Semitic tribes northward. Some settled in Sinai, Palestine, and the Levant. Others moved into Mesopotamia, where they mixed with the Cimmerians and adopted their advanced knowledge and culture. These became the Akkadians, and among them were the ancestors of the Assyrians. The first Assyrian settlements emerged along the middle course of the Tigris River. Cities like Nineveh, Erbil, and most importantly, Ashur. For centuries, these cities were vassals of the more powerful states of southern Mesopotamia. They were part of Sargon the Great's kingdom, Hammurabi's empire, and many other dominant Mesopotamian states. But Ashur had a geographical advantage. It sat directly on the trade route connecting lower Mesopotamia to Anatolia. The city naturally developed as a trading settlement, but it quickly grew beyond being just a stopover. It transformed into a major commercial hub. Assyrian merchants established trading colonies throughout Anatolia, with the largest being Karum-Kanesh. They transported lapis lazuli, tin, and copper westward, while bringing timber, textiles, silver, and gold eastward. The wealth from this trade fueled Ashur's growth, and by the 19th century BC, the city had gained independence from Babylonia. The God City. Now here's something fascinating. Ashur wasn't just the name of a city. It was also the name of the supreme god worshipped by its inhabitants. In ancient Mesopotamia, it was common for each city to have its own patron deity. The Babylonians worshipped Marduk, the people of Ur revered Enlil, and in Uruk, the chief deity was Anu. But for the Assyrians, Ashur was more than just their divine protector. He was the embodiment of the very rock upon which their city was built. The name of the god and the name of the city were written the same way, symbolizing an inseparable connection. The city wasn't simply named after the god, it was the god. Little is known about Ashur's political structure during this early period, but one thing is clear. It was not yet a kingdom. The citizens considered their true king to be the god Ashur himself. The city's ruler acted only as his representative on earth. This governor's position was hereditary, but his power was limited. He was restricted by a council of elders and a special official called the Limu, who was elected for one-year terms. Any major decision required council approval, and funding had to be secured through the Limu. This system of checks and balances would eventually crumble, but not before Ashur faced new challenges. Centuries of subjugation. Between the 18th and 17th centuries BC, peace in Anatolia collapsed. Internal wars broke out, trade declined, and Assyrian colonies like Karum-Kanesh were destroyed. Ashur lost its status as a major trade center, and fell back under Babylonian control. The 16th century BC turned the region of Ashur into a battleground. Babylonians and Hittites clashed in fierce conflicts, culminating in the capture and sacking of Babylon in 1531 BC. Soon after, Kassite tribes from the Iranian plateau seized control of Babylonia, but the fall of Babylon didn't bring independence to the Assyrians. Around the same time, Hurrian tribes from the Armenian highlands migrated into Syria, establishing several states. The most powerful was Mitanni. For nearly 2 centuries, Ashur remained a vassal of Mitanni. The city was nominally independent, but its fortifications were demolished at Mitanni's command. Representatives from Mitanni sat on Ashur's city council, ensuring no major decisions were made without their approval. However, this period of subjugation had a silver lining. The Assyrians adopted significant military innovations from Mitanni: the light war chariot, the composite bow, and lamellar armor. These would prove crucial in the centuries to come. Independence and ideology. In the 15th and 14th centuries BC, everything changed. Ashur regained its independence, and with it came a radical transformation in ideology. The ruler Ashur-bel-nisheshu took advantage of internal strife within Mitanni to rebuild the city's walls, an act nearly equivalent to a declaration of war. Later, Ashur-uballit expelled Mitanni envoys, declared himself king, and sought support from Egypt. This didn't sit well with Babylon. In a letter to Pharaoh Akhenaten, the Babylonian king referred to the Assyrians as his vassals and demanded that Egypt refuse to recognize them. The pharaoh ignored him. With independence came a new worldview. The Assyrians no longer saw themselves as merely a city-state. They now viewed their realm as a territorial state, not just the city of Ashur, but Assyria, or Mat Ashur, the land of Ashur. King Adad-nirari. I began calling himself King of the World, rather than simply King of Assyria. Royal titles increasingly reflected military achievements, with the key title being Mureshu Mitri, the one who expands the borders. The Assyrians believed that the god Ashur was the source of the highest cosmic order, and that their state was the embodiment of divine law, surrounded by chaos. From their perspective, expanding Assyrian rule was an unquestionable good, and any resistance to it was blasphemy. If Ashur was the god of gods, then the king of Assyria was destined to be the king of earthly kings, ruling over all peoples. Territorial expansion became their divine mission, a fulfillment of Ashur's will. And so their military campaigns became relentless. The first expansion. This expansion played a major role in the downfall of Mitanni. Adad-nirari the Arthidron delivered the first devastating blow, annexing part of Mitanni's territory and forcing its king to become a vassal. Shortly after, the Hittites destroyed Mitanni's capital, and the new Assyrian king Shalmaneser the Mpshian annexed what remained of the once powerful state. The next major expansion came during the reign of Tukulti-Ninurta. In the south, he conquered Babylonia. In the north, he dealt a crushing blow to the Hittites. Assyria could have become a full-fledged empire at this point, but those ambitions were cut short when Tukulti-Ninurta was assassinated in a palace coup. His death triggered internal strife and power struggles. Around the same time, the late Bronze Age collapse swept across the Near East, bringing trade states and mighty empires to decline or complete disappearance. Assyria survived, but its territory shrank to a small core along the middle Tigris. Military innovations. By the end of the 10th century BC, the Assyrians, led by King Ashurnasirpal II and his successors, resumed their military campaigns. Initially defensive against Aramaean raids, these expeditions soon shifted into aggressive expansionist warfare. A key factor in Assyria's success was a series of groundbreaking military innovations. Cavalry. They were the first in the Near East to develop cavalry as a distinct military unit. Early Assyrian cavalry consisted mainly of mounted archers, though they later introduced heavy shock cavalry, precursors to the Parthian cataphracts. Siege warfare. The Assyrians revolutionized siege warfare. They began using battering rams to break through gates and walls. Since most fortifications were built from sun-dried brick, even simple rams were highly effective. They also deployed siege towers with archers and dug tunnels beneath walls. While earlier armies typically starved defenders into surrender, the Assyrians mastered direct assaults against even the most well-fortified cities. Postal system. They created one of history's first postal systems, allowing them to establish territorial administrations across conquered lands. Governors were closely monitored through regular reports delivered via postal service. Road networks. To enable rapid troop movement and ensure uninterrupted communication, the Assyrians built an extensive network of paved roads, among the first in history. The Empire of Terror. All these innovations required immense resources, but the Assyrians lacked a formal tax system. Their solution? Make warfare continuous. They began conducting annual military campaigns focused not only on expanding borders, but also on extracting as much wealth as possible from conquered territories. These campaigns reached their peak during the reign of King Ashurnasirpal II. His conquests were marked by extraordinary brutality, even by ancient standards. Here's how Ashurnasirpal described one of his victories. I took the city and slew many warriors. I seized all that could be taken. I cut off the heads of the fighters and raised before the city a tower of skulls and bodies. A tower of the living I built. The young men I impaled upon stakes around the city, and the maidens I cast into the flames. Thus did I make known the might of my hand and the terror of my rule. When Ashurnasirpal's army captured a city, horrific death was the norm. Prisoners were beheaded, dismembered, their skin flayed, impaled on stakes, crucified, buried alive, drowned, or burned. This policy of terror proved highly effective in the short term. Many kingdoms submitted without resistance, too fearful to fight. Shalmaneser III described one such bloodless victory. The panic-stricken terror and fear which my lord Ashur sent upon them seized the dwellers of the city. When with my host I came before their walls, the king grasped my feet and submitted to me. The Backlash. But in the long run, the policy of terror backfired spectacularly. While it inspired fear, it also bred deep and lasting hatred. Nearly every neighboring people came to not only dread the Assyrians, but loathe them with intensity. Even though Ashurnasirpal's successors were not as cruel, the reputation stuck and could not be undone. The goal had been to crush any will to resist, but over time it produced the opposite effect. As soon as internal strife erupted in Assyria, multiple peoples rose in rebellion. In the north, those who had suffered from Assyrian raids united to form a new state, Urartu. In the west, powerful confederations of Aramaean tribes emerged. Rebellions frequently broke out in Babylon. Ultimately, the policy of endless warfare led to Assyria's decline. The plundered lands, stripped of resources and populations, stopped generating wealth. Trade collapsed. Provincial governors began slipping out of central control and started intervening in power struggles. By the end of the 9th century BC, King Shamshi-Adad V ruled little more than the capital and a small patch of land around it. Tiglath-Pileser. Three's reforms. Assyria was saved from total collapse by King Tiglath-Pileser III, who seized power in 745 BC through a military coup. Once on the throne, he implemented sweeping reforms that transformed Assyria. Military reform. Previously, the Assyrian military consisted mostly of militia, free citizens who supplied their own equipment. Tiglath-Pileser formed Assyria's first professional army. He recruited impoverished peasants, equipped them at state expense, introduced regular training and strict discipline, and reorganized the army into specialized units: chariots, cavalry, light and heavy infantry, and engineering corps. Administrative reform. To prevent provincial governors from becoming independent rulers, he reduced the size of provinces while increasing their number. Crucially, he began appointing eunuchs as governors. Since eunuchs couldn't have children, they posed no dynastic threat. Tax reform. He imposed new taxes and labor obligations on farmers and craftsmen to fund the professional army. The policy of uprooting, 22E24. But Tiglath-Pileser's most significant innovation was a new approach to conquered peoples. To completely break the spirit of resistance, the Assyrians introduced a policy called Nasahu, uprooting. After conquering a region, they would deport nearly the entire population to another part of the empire and replace them with captives from other lands. The idea was to sever the connection between a people and their homeland, erase their national identity, and assimilate them into the Assyrian world. Interestingly, this policy led to the Aramaization of the Near East. Originally, Aramaean tribes lived in compact groups in Syria, but after mass deportations, Aramaeans were scattered across the empire. Over time, their language, not Assyrian, became the lingua franca of the Near East, even in Assyria's own heartland. At a certain point, the Assyrians began keeping records in both Akkadian and Aramaic. In relief carvings, scribes are often depicted working in pairs, one writing in Akkadian on clay tablets, the other in Aramaic on papyrus. The Neo-Assyrian Empire. The Nasahu policy, combined with Tiglath-Pileser's reforms, proved extraordinarily effective. In 745 BC, he aided the Babylonian king against Chaldean tribes and Elam, making Babylon his vassal and adopting the prestigious title King of Sumer and Akkad. He then subdued the Median tribes on the Iranian plateau. Having tested his reformed army in combat, Tiglath-Pileser set his sights on the most powerful state in the region, Urartu. In 743 BC, the decisive Battle of Arpad took place. The Assyrian victory was so overwhelming that many states in Syria and the Levant immediately submitted and paid tribute. In 735 BC, Tiglath-Pileser led his army to Tushpa, Urartu's capital on Lake Van. The Assyrians breached the outer defenses and destroyed the lower city, but the citadel remained impregnable. Still, the campaign triggered an internal crisis in Urartu that lasted for years. In 732 BC, Tiglath-Pileser conquered Damascus. The Phoenician city-states paid massive tributes. Tyre alone paid 4.5 tons of gold. The kingdoms of Israel and Judah became client states. His campaign reached Egypt's border, ending with the capture of Ashkelon, capital of the Philistines. In 729 BC, he united Assyria and Babylonia by crowning himself king of Babylon. In just 15 years, Assyria had brought the entire Near East under its control, from Lake Van to Egypt, from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. This marked the birth of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. The peak of power. Tiglath-Pileser's successors, Shalmaneser V, Sargon-Sakun, Sennacherib, and Esarhaddon, continued his expansionist policy. Assyria reached its greatest territorial extent at the beginning of the 7th century BC. Egypt, Elam, and Cyprus were conquered. Rebellious Phoenician cities were subdued. Urartu was pushed far north, and in the west, the Assyrians seized vast territories in Anatolia. In 689 BC, during the suppression of yet another Babylonian uprising, Sennacherib utterly destroyed Babylon. Not a single stone left standing. He deported the population, relocated the city's divine statues to Nineveh, and flooded the site with the waters of the Euphrates. However, the city was later rebuilt by his successor, Esarhaddon, under whom the empire reached the peak of its power. The authority of the Assyrian kings knew no bounds. All the peoples of the Near East had bowed before them. It was hard to imagine that within just a century, not a trace of mighty Assyria would remain. But that's exactly what happened. The seeds of destruction. In 672 BC, Esarhaddon named his son Ashurbanipal as his successor. All the Assyrian nobility swore loyalty to him, but in Babylonia, the local elites refused to take an oath of allegiance. To prevent rebellion, Esarhaddon made a fateful decision. He split the empire in two. The throne of Assyria went to Ashurbanipal, while the throne of Babylonia went to another son, Shamash-Shum-Ukin. This decision was well received in Babylonia, as Shamash-Shum-Ukin's mother was Babylonian. In Assyria, however, it was met with skepticism. A clay tablet survives to this day with a message from the court priest Adad-Shumu-Usur to Esarhaddon. Thou hast clothed one of thy sons in the royal garments, and bestowed upon him the kingship of the land of Ashur. Thy eldest son thou hast appointed to reign over Babylon. But, O my king, what thou hast done with the young kings is not good for the land of Ashur. Let wisdom guide thy hand, lest strife and discord fall upon the throne. These words turned out to be prophetic. In 669 BC, Esarhaddon died. Although Shamash-Shum-Ukin was crowned king of Babylon, real authority remained with Ashurbanipal. A strong Assyrian garrison stayed in Babylon, loyal to Nineveh. Ashurbanipal continued offering sacrifices to Babylonian gods, a sacred duty reserved for Babylon's king. For a time, peace held between the brothers. During that period, the empire appeared stronger than ever. Urartu had become a client state. In the west, the Lydian kingdom became an Assyrian vassal. In 653 BC, the Assyrians crushed Elam. The severed head of the Elamite king was hung in Ashurbanipal's royal garden. But Shamash-Shum-Ukin longed for Babylon's full independence. The Great Rebellion. Secretly, Shamash-Shum-Ukin began forming an anti-Assyrian alliance. His coalition included Chaldean principalities, the Elamites, Persians, Medes, Arabs, Egyptians, and even the Lydians. Interestingly, Assyrian counterintelligence uncovered his plot. Clay tablets from Ashurbanipal's royal archive contain reports detailing suspicious diplomatic activity. Yet these warnings were ignored. In the spring of 652 BC, Shamash-Shum-Ukin launched his rebellion. But the coalition failed to present a united front. Egypt provided no support at all. Lydia, under attack from the Cimmerians, quickly withdrew. The remaining allies acted without coordination. Using divide-and-conquer tactics, the Assyrians defeated the rebel forces one by one. By autumn 648 BC, they had captured Babylon. Rather than be taken alive, Shamash-shum-ukin committed suicide along with his wife and closest supporters. The Assyrians unleashed terrible vengeance. Rebels had their tongues ripped out and limbs hacked off. Their mutilated bodies were left for dogs and pigs to devour. After crushing Babylon, the Assyrians destroyed the Elamite state and punished the Arabs. Ashurbanipal celebrated his victory with a brutal display of power. His chariot was drawn not by horses, but by 5 defeated kings. Behind him walked the closest allies of Shamash-shum-ukin, each wearing the severed heads of rebellious princes around their necks. The beginning of the end. Assyria had reached the height of its power. It seemed no force on earth could stand against it. But in reality, Assyria was bleeding out from within. The constant uprisings had drained its strength. The Medes never returned to Assyrian control. Egypt soon broke away. Lydia refused to recognize Ashurbanipal's authority. He no longer had the strength to reconquer these increasingly independent border states. Then a new threat emerged. The Cimmerians, following in the wake of the Scythians, began appearing along Assyria's borders. In the 630s BC, under the leadership of Madies, they invaded Assyrian territory. Weakened by endless wars and rebellions, Assyria was in no condition to resist. The Cimmerians swept across the western parts of the empire like a tidal wave, rolling westward beyond the Euphrates. This sudden catastrophe broke the back of the Assyrian state and plunged it into chaos. Ashurbanipal lost the trust of the military elite and was removed from power, left only with the Babylonian throne. In 627 BC, he died, triggering a civil war between his sons and his generals. The rapid collapse had begun. The fall. One by one, Assyrian provinces declared independence. In Babylon, a Chaldean prince named Nabopolassar seized power, declared independence, and launched a war of liberation. By 619 BC, he had fully freed Babylonia from Assyrian control. Meanwhile, Egypt re-entered the scene, occupying Canaan, the Levant, and Syria, regions left leaderless after the Cimmerian invasion. The Assyrians lacked the strength to confront the rising power of Babylon. In a desperate move, King Sin-shumu-lishir formed an anti-Babylonian coalition that included Assyria, Urartu, Mannai, and Egypt. But it was too late. Nabopolassar defeated the coalition's combined forces. Around the same time, the Median king Cyaxares invaded from another direction. Both armies raced to the city of Ashur. The Medes arrived first, stormed the city, and burned it to the ground. On the flaming ruins of Ashur, Cyaxares and Nabopolassar sealed their alliance. In 612 BC, they laid siege to the Assyrian capital, Nineveh. After 3 months, the city fell. King Sinsharishkun was killed during the final assault. Chapter 17. The remnants of the Assyrian army, supported by Egypt, regrouped in the city of Haran. The last king of Assyria, Ashur-uballit II, tried to rally what was left of the empire, but his efforts failed. In 610 BC, the Medes captured Haran. The following year, Nabopolassar crushed the last Assyrian-Egyptian forces in the region. And with that, the story of the Assyrian Empire, the first empire in history, came to an end. The Assyrian Empire left a complex legacy. On one hand, they were pioneers, creating the first professional army, postal service, road system, and military engineering innovations. Their administrative systems influenced nearly every major empire that followed, from the Achaemenids to the Ottomans. On the other hand, their policy of terror and brutality became legendary. The methods they used to inspire fear ultimately bred the hatred that destroyed them. When Nineveh fell in 612 BC, the prophet Nahum wrote, "Woe to the city of blood, full of lies, full of plunder, never without victims. All who hear the news about you clap their hands at your fall, for who has not felt your endless cruelty?" The Assyrians had built an empire that stretched from the Nile to the Caspian Sea, but they built it on a foundation of terror that could not last. Their story is a reminder that empires built on fear alone are destined to crumble. When that fear fades, and when it does, the reckoning is swift and merciless. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient history, hit that like button and subscribe for more content on the empires that shaped our world.